Good morning. Welcome to Trainwreck Marriage. I'm Dave Touchton.
And I'm Susan Touchton.
Hey, last week, if you listened to our podcast, it was a tough week. And, for me, it was just really overwhelming. The stuff that was being thrown at me, the extremely negative things that were being said from other people. And, we had a lot going on. We had 3 graduations and a farm show all in 3 weeks. And just so you know, the farm show has about 1,000 booths, and we set up electric for it. And they had moved this year, so it was the first year that we had been at this new location. So it was one of those things that we really didn't know what it was going to look like in the end. And then there was just a lot of negativity. A lot of people just saying how wrong I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't. And these are coming from people that don't know squat or apple butter about electric. And it really just affected me greatly when people run their mouth, have no clue what's going on, but their opinion matters. And it really bogged me down in the trenches. I mean, if it wouldn't have been for Susan, and that's, we do a yin and yang thing. When I'm down, she's up, and when she's down, I'm up. So God's really blessed us there. But, how do you get through those tough weeks? I honestly didn't pray as much as I should through it. I can look back and see where, when I did finally give it to God and say, listen, either you're going to make this work or not. I'm counting on you. And the pressure was relieved. And so, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that anyone that you think's got it all together, they have bad weeks. And that's really the moral of this story. You're not alone. I really tailed together really about 2.5 weeks tight of just bad after bad, just depressing, just aggravating, from every perspective. And, when I get mentally fatigued, I get exhausted. And the more I get exhausted, the worse I get. And so it's kind of Satan's little foothold on me that once I start spiraling down, it's easy to keep me spiraling in that direction. I ended up sleeping 12 hours after the show and really was able to kind of grasp back where I was at. And, looking back, I'm just so thankful for Susan to be able to be there and just really encourage me. And not that she had any of the answers, not that she could fix anything. It was the point that she was there pointing me back to God, but also saying, I understand. And I think that, as a spouse, we kind of downplay our real roles. And sometimes they're just supportive roles. And she'll tell you I'm a fixer. I do a horrible job of listening. I have been getting better over the decades, but some of that's age, some of that's God, some of that's a whole lot of counseling. I mean, but it really just wanted to talk this week about kind of how we help each other through these type of situations, because it's easy to pick. One thing that most don't know is I quit smoking 5 weeks before the farm show, and one of the main guys crawled in my shorts and just like beat me to death mentally. And I told Susan, I said, I'm gonna start smoking again. And the first reaction would be absolutely not. You've done this far, you can make it, you can blah blah blah. And that's not what she said. She said, you do what you got to do. Because she also knows I'm gonna quit again. So it's not I just didn't know how to deal with it. And that's one thing God's showing me of without him, I am still weak. I'm still a broken vessel that cannot handle the pressure. And so just kind of wanted to kind of back and forth between me and Susan, different times of how we support our spouse without really even agreeing, disagreeing. I mean, it's not about that, or fixing it.
Well, and I think too, there's so many thoughts going through my head right now. For me, I look back over the last few weeks, and they were really hectic, and there was a lot of pressure, and there was a lot of ugly comments and things that just tried to beat us down. But for me, it was, um, I just think, we came through on the other side. And as I knew we would, God is faithful in the fact that, yes, we're going to go through trials and difficulties, but one, how are you going to respond in that trial and difficulty? And two, when He brings you to the other side, you can look back and see His hand through it. I feel like there was, a choice when He said, I'm going to start smoking again. Well, first of all, that's His choice. I could have either beat him and told him how wrong it was, or how he, needed to be relying on God and not cigarette. I mean, there's so many different avenues that I could have taken. None of them would have been beneficial.
Oh, absolutely. They'd have devastated me.
Well, and the thing is, I couldn't have changed his mind. And I know he'll quit when he's ready. And the thing is, I used to be a smoker, and it's the most difficult thing to do is to quit and to stay quit, you know. And so I think that's a really good thing to point out is you have a choice on how you're going to react to your spouse's decision or situation or whatever. He didn't need beat any more than he already was being beat.
Or beating myself up.
Yeah, or beating himself up, because he has a tendency to do that really well also. And so I think being supportive and letting him make those decisions and letting him do him is, for me, was the right choice, because there wasn't anything that I could have done anyway. And if I would have chose differently, it would have continued to put a divide between us, and we didn't need that. We're at a point now with everything that's going on with the business and working on getting the house still. We need to be on the same page. We need to be working together and not against each other. And that's choices. That's things that you can either decide to stand with one another, or to stand against, just by the words that we speak to one another. And so I would just encourage you to, be an encouragement instead of a terror down. Um, One of the verses that I've been working on memorizing is First Thessalonians 5, verse 18 and 9, or verses 16 through 18. Sorry, First Thessalonians 5, 16 through 18. And it says, be joyful always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Okay, so what does that look like? We know we can't be joyful always, because there's circumstances and situations that come up. But when we keep our eyes on Jesus, it's easier to be joyful always. It doesn't say be happy always. It says be joyful. Have a content heart in where God has you. Pray continually. Always give things to God. Always have a conversation with Him. Bring everything to Him and give thanks, because this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Give thanks always. No matter what the circumstances is, there's always something to be thankful for. You just have to step back out of the situation, pause, and think about the many blessings, whether it be the sun came out today, which in our case has not happened for a while. God's everything is in bloom right now, the beauty of God's creation. If you have to dig really deep to find something to be thankful for, go ahead and dig deep, because there's always something to be thankful for.
Well, and that's the thing is, a lot of thoughts passed through my mind as you were talking, but one I want to really focus on is we have not always been this way.
For sure.
This would have been a war, for lack of a better word, in the past where, you really don't want to do that. You know how hard, and, in the past I look back because I've done it to her as well. So it's not like I'm saying she does it, we do it. And where you end up just beating your spouse down along with the world, and you create this situation to where really it's one of those things that you're actually more of the problem than they are. And in my defense, I always was trying to help, trying to fix, trying to blah blah blah. And only there's some things that only God can help with. And that's a struggle for guys in fixing things, and some women, where you got to be in control so you don't get hurt again. On top of that, you've got to have this fix it all mentality, and you don't need God. And that's what through one of the band members that's working on some stuff, he is seeing God move greatly. But he's also available, willing to wait on God, and God's putting together the perfect plan. So, I mean, this is not, Christianity was never called to be the easy street, which some pastors preach that, but that's not true. The other thing is, one of the things that was told to me last week is Jesus never promised you happiness. Nowhere in the Bible where you see Jesus say, I will make you happy. He says, I'll give you peace. I'll give you joy. Never happiness. And it's not the point he doesn't want us to be happy, and that's not the context at all. But the context is, if you don't find joy in me, then you're at the mercy of the world and your emotions to find happiness. And that really kind of struck me because I hadn't really thought that through. I tied joy with happiness together. Kind of like another thing I heard was, he says, be kind, not nice. We've kind of turned Jesus into this nice police, not kind. And kind sometimes is being really truthful with somebody. And I had a friend, we were talking through a situation, and he said, if I don't be honest with them, I'm being unkind. I mean, and that can be taken out of context, so don't jump all over that. But it's really one of those things. What is your spouse seeing? Because your spouse is the one you beat. You take everything out on your spouse. You go to the ballpark, you talk to people, everything's wonderful, everything's great, let's laugh. You get home, and it's how horrible it is. So I think you've got to own who you are in the relationship. And are you the Debbie Downer in the bunch? Are you the one that's actually beating them more than the world by your words?
Yeah, and I think too, there's sometimes you just need some space as far as, David has always said you beat the ones you're closest to. So your spouse should be the one that you're closest to. But with that being said, with all of the stuff that's been going on in the busyness of life, I felt like him and I have kind of we're in the same book, but not necessarily on the same page. We're maybe even in the same chapter, but not necessarily. There's been he goes and does his thing, I go and do my thing, and there's not been a real connection. That's going to happen if you guys have any kind of life at all. You're raising children, you have jobs. It's easy to kind of pull away from one another because of the busyness of life. And I hadn't shared with David yet that I just kind of felt like we were apart. I just felt like we weren't communicating a whole lot, and there wasn't a whole lot. Not that there was any issues or that I felt any way other than just some distance, And so I think it's important to just keep in mind that conversation needs to be had, of we've gotten so caught up in what's been going on. And we kept saying, if we can get through the farm show, then we'll be good. If we can get through the farm show, then we'll be good. Well, we've gotten through the farm show and we are good. But now we need to kind of have a conversation about what's our next. We know that getting everything together to get the loan for the house is kind of our next thing. But what does that look like? I feel like I'm kind of walking the path on my own. He's kind of walking the path on his own. But we need to come together and have that conversation of what does that look like? And then what do we do from there? Like I said, we don't have a whole lot as far as on the calendar goes. We have no more children playing ball. We have no more children. Our evenings are fairly freed up with the exception of some men's and women's groups. But just kind of, if I feel like if I'm out there kind of dangling with no real direction, I just kind of feel lost. And so just having that conversation. And, one other thing that just came to mind is communication is so important in the sense that we had a situation yesterday that our daughter's having some concerns about our granddaughter's daycare, and it's significant concerns. I didn't know the best way to counsel her because I didn't experience when our kids went to daycare. I didn't experience some of the same issues. And David wasn't at the office, but my first thought was I need to run it past him because he always brings a different perspective into the situation. And he just always makes you look at things differently, or maybe you hadn't thought, and he did. He brought up something that we really hadn't thought of that maybe was part of what was going on. So just the conversation, having conversations with your spouse in the midst of chaos. And I know that everybody's going into a really busy time of year with vacations, school's out. You may have a plan to what to do with your kids. You may not. There's a lot of sports things going on. And so just don't lose sight of spending time with your spouse. Because something else we've learned, and I feel like maybe I'm going down some rabbit trails, but just follow me, is we're in a place now where our two girls are out of the house. Eli's our only one left. Come February or March, he's going to be out of the house. The only thing that we're going to have left is each other, and we have a new puppy, which is a whole nother podcast. But, and we really like each other. But it's not because we just like each other. I feel like God has allowed both of us to mold and shape us to where we like spending time together. We like doing things together. And so find that even ground, because your kids are not going to be there forever. And so you have to learn to like each other while they're growing up so that when they are gone, you still like each other.
Well, and I think the last really month probably is the best definition. We've been surviving. Mm-hmm. We haven't been thriving together. We've been both trying to, whether it be cookies for the graduation, get in the tent, it has been just almost survival mode. And I agree with her. I agree we're distant, but we're still together. Mm-hmm. It's kind of an odd feeling because we're not normally in this spot. But it's really one of those things to where she's right. In fact, I'd planned on taking off the weekend after a farm show and getting away. Well, that didn't work out. That kind of all fell apart. And so, it just is what it is. And we will get caught back up. But, first of all, thank you for saying what you've said, because I don't take appreciation very well at all, and I don't say thank you, and I usually don't mean it, and I truly mean it. That when you start talking about different perspective and stuff, it really means a lot. And that's the thing is with guys, Mary Jane easy. And I used to tell the kids, and thinking about it, my oldest or our oldest, and she's more like me, so I call it my oldest because she's just like me. She would try to pin me against Susan in an argument where she knew I agreed with her, and tried to pick the win. And finally, I drug her out in the garage when Susan wasn't around. And I said, let's make one thing clear here. I just want to tell you where I'm at. When you try to pin me against your mother, you're going to be leaving. She's not. So I'm siding with her. You automatically lose. Doesn't matter if I agree or disagree, because that's a thing that we were horrible at in the beginning, was being united with the kids. You know, and the kids knew it. And kids are kids. They're going to play it for their best advantage. And so the kids would pin me against her. Thought we ought to do this. She felt like we ought to do this. And the thing is, the kids don't want to see us divorced. They just want to get their way. And I think sometimes, with children looking back, I mean, we got 26, 23, and 17, almost 18. When you start looking at, they're wanting a win. They're not wanting us divorced. But what they do sometimes helps aggravate the relationship. So Susan's exactly right. You need to stay focused at the end of the day. Sometimes you have to go back to the beginning. Why did you get married? Why? Was it because you didn't like her and you felt like, hey, she'd put out good kids? Was that it? Or was there more to it? And that's in our counseling, what helped me was reflecting back of why we got married. Playing some of the old songs that we danced to when we were dating. That portion right there is the piece that for me, you have to do sometimes when you're married, because sometimes you do get in survival mode like we've been in. And thank goodness we don't have a bunch of 3-year-olds. We do have a dog that currently we dislike about half of what he does. But, I think it's very valid on surviving a bad week. It does take communication and the conversation at some point in time. And you both know it's there and coming, and it's no one's fault. It's called life. And life's tough.
Well, and this is no, great thing that I'm getting ready to say. We all know this, that marriage takes work. You have to work at it. If you are expecting everything just to be rainbows and roses during your entire marriage, you're going to be highly disappointed. You have to work at it. You have to make the effort to try to make it work. And like David says, why did you get married in the first place? Guys, there is a lot of things that are going to make you forget why you got married. Question, why did I marry this person? But the bottom line is, you were in love. You had a great connection. Hopefully all the things that the reason you get married, you can't live without this person, whatever the case may be. Don't forget that stuff, because again, when all is said and done, you will be stuck with prayerfully. You will be stuck with this person for the rest of your life till God calls one of you home. And the ideal is to not be miserable in that relationship. I remember there were years that we went through I was just miserable. Not necessarily just because of the marriage, but because of all the things that were going on. We were raising a family. We were trying to build a business, our marriage, everything that everybody else experiences. And I was miserable. But the beauty of it is, if you stick with it, just like we talked about earlier, at the end of the day, when this particular season that you may be going through is over, you can look back and see how God had his hand in all of it. And then you get to a point prayerfully where you really do like each other, and you do have the same interests, and you do continue to want to be together. I can honestly say I'm probably more in love with David now than I have been over the last, long time.
20 years.
But it's because we made it through the season. We stuck it out by the grace of God. We made it through the season of raising our children, and praise God, they have turned out to be really great human beings. And they're successful and they're trying to figure out life on their own. They're not, you know, in their 20s living in our basement and not having a job, and nobody's on drugs and nobody's in jail. And it's by the grace of God. And so now we get to think of these ways we can go have fun, or we can talk about the house that we're getting and what we're going to do to it. And like, it's just, but again, it's just a season. There will be a season, I have no doubt, that we will go through that is difficult. We've got aging parents. We've got grandchildren that are being brought up in this crazy world. There's things that are going to continue to try to separate us and get in our face. And, Satan is great he's the deceptor of lies, and he's great at trying to put us, against each other. But for this season, we're in a really good spot because we've done kind of what we were supposed to do, and you will too. You just have to hang in there and stick it out.
Well, and I think that you really have two choices: stay married or get divorced. And what I mean by that is, the couple that all their kids are gone, or as soon as their kids leave, they get divorced, or they've been married for 30 years and they get divorced. That's lack of communication. That's needs not being met. And it's needs as in the conversation, the love, the security, the affirmation, words of affirmation. There's a whole list of them, and we may go down that road another day. But the other thing is, though, I think of the relationship with Christ. What does that look like? So when you start talking about relationship with Christ, it's kind of like when we started dating. Did I want to talk to her once a week on Sunday morning between 9 and 10? No. If we were breathing and I was awake, I wanted to talk to her. Well, that's the way your relationship with Christ is, because you don't grow a relationship by just accidentally making it happen. You grow a relationship by investing time. And that's where a lot of Christians go sideline, is they get just enough of Jesus to stop. And it's not about the relationship growing. It's about them getting just enough. And so if you're just starting out, or have been in a relationship with Christ, or don't know anything about it doesn't really matter where you're at. You have to start somewhere, and you have to invest time daily, whether it be listening to podcasts, listening to the Bible. You have to build that relationship with Christ. It is not an automatic. It's a marriage. Christ is going to come back, and the church, who are the people, are the one being the bride. So, I mean, really, when, as we start wrapping this up and looking at this direction, if your marriage is unsuccessful, my first question would be, is your marriage with Christ successful? Because there's not marriage problems. God did not make an inferior product called marriage that needs tweaked and fixed. What he made was a perfect plan, but we're not smart enough, or we're too prideful, or we're ... to be willing and available, build a relationship as a marriage should be built. So, it really, when you start comparing your marriage with your relationship with Christ, I mean, for me, it's a direct relationship of, if one's in the toilet, guess what? The other one's probably in the toilet.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say probably is, every relationship is not just one-sided. So your relationship with Christ is you communicating to him, but also allowing him to communicate to you through his word, through other people, through podcasts, and you being available to listen whenever he is speaking. It's not a one-sided relationship. And although we don't hear him audibly, there's ways that he uses to speak to us. So just be aware that just as in your marriage relationship or any relationship, it should not always be one-sided. Communication is between two people. So you, with your relationship with Christ, let him speak as well.
Well, guys, we love you. Whoops, there's a phone call. Hey, we love you. We'd appreciate if you'd share it with your friends. You know, bottom line is we're here to be a vessel for God. And we appreciate you guys listening, and really have a great week.
Yep. Have a good one.